Today I'm going to show you how I made this cool shirt with a silk-screened name tag that I'm using for conferences and meetups. It's kind of a fun illusion and icebreaker. Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to use the Ikonart screen printing kit here at Decatur Makers. Decatur Makers is a makerspace in the Atlanta metro area in Georgia, United States. Ikonart is a kit that simplifies screen print production for hobbyist uses. So in our shop, the first thing to do is grab the Icon kit. It sits over here on a shelf with some of the sewing materials. Open the box up. Inside will be several packages of film. There's some for inkjet printers and some for laser printers. Each has their pros and cons. Today I'm going to be using laser printers because I don't print a whole lot and I don't like dealing with dried up ink cartridges, but the inkjet one actually produces a slightly better result. I'm going to load the film inside of our laser printer. It doesn't matter which side up or which side down. And find the little cord with the printer tag on it. Plug it into my laptop. And I've already prepared my art file. Just make your art black and white. Whatever is black is going to be ink when you print it, and whatever is white will not be ink. Finish unpacking the kit. You can take the cover off, set up the light, plug in the power source. So there's a couple packs of the screens themselves. There's two kinds. There's one for textiles and there's one for everything else. Everything else would mostly be like posters and paper, cardboard, things like that. They're a little bit different color. And the other difference is that the pore size between the screens is a little bit wider for textile printing because textile inks are a little bit thicker. You'll notice that there's a shiny side and a kind of a grid feeling side. We're going to make the shiny side down. Take your positive, put it on the top of it. And then there's a clear sheet that you'll put on top of it in order to hold everything flat together, and that keeps it in focus. It's important to make sure that there's no dust on any of these parts. If you have dust, it'll make little tiny holes that ink can seep through. It's not a huge deal. You can just put some tape on it or fill those holes with glue, but if you can avoid them, it'll save you some trouble later on. Make sure everything's nice, flat, and sandwiched together tightly. Set a timer and turn the light on for 30 seconds. So remove the cover film and your positive. Put the screen on a clipboard and let's walk over to the restroom. In the restroom, we're going to wash out the screen. So you're going to use warm water. 120 to 140 degrees is pretty good. Basically, how hot you might have tea. And it's going to take a while to wash out. So during this process, what happens is that any areas that were hit by the ultraviolet light are going to turn hard and they're going to not wash out. But the areas that were covered up by your design have not been exposed by the ultraviolet and they're still kind of soft and liquidy and will melt easier. This process takes about 20 to 25 minutes. So we're going to skip around a little bit to not make a boring video, but you'll notice some changes as we skip. Already you can see that the color of the screen is changing where the light hit it. You're starting to see the image appear. Here you can see how there's some holes appearing where it's completely washed out in spots. It's hard to tell since we're underwater, but the fabric screen is still in those white spots. There's just none of the masking material left anymore. You'll want to keep doing this until it looks like all of your design parts are nice and clear or white, and all of the non-design parts are still kind of bluish purple. All right, so when you're done, turn the water off. Just kind of take your hand and squeegee as much of the water off as you can. Maybe blot it a little bit with a paper towel in order to accelerate the drying. And we're going to wait until it dries. You can hang it up, or you can use a little bit of a blow dryer, or you can just wait. Once you've done that, put it back on the stand and give it an exposure of about 2 minutes. This will further harden the areas that are not design and make your screen last longer. Okay, so now that we're done with that, we're ready to make our design on an object. We're going to grab some tape. Because we're going to make a mess, let's get some paper to put down on top of the table. And because we're making a mess, let's go get some rubber gloves. So I'm going to tape the paper down just to protect the table. I'm going to open up my ink, get the seal inside cleared off. I've taped my shirt down to keep it from moving, and I'm going to peel the clear backing off of my stencil. Now keep this nice and clean because you're going to use it again. On the back of the stencil is kind of a tacky glue, sort of like what you would have from Post-it notes, and just kind of rub that down so that it stays in place. This is why we don't have to have a frame, because we have that tacky stuff that will kind of keep the screen in place. It's not perfect, and my shirt's not drum tight to the table. Professionals will put a cardboard insert inside the shirts in order to hold them a little more stable, but we're winging it here. And I'm going to dollop some ink on the screen. Here I'm using, probably going to use about a heaping teaspoon. Doesn't need to be real precise. If you don't have enough, you can put more on and try again. If you have too much, you can scrape it off and reuse it. Just be careful not to get any on the shirt or on your hands or anywhere else that you don't want it. And inside the kit, there's a little squeegee that I'm going to use to push the ink through the screen. There are other types of squeegees that are made of rubber or silicone. They have different properties, different purposes. And I'm going to make a couple passes just to make sure that I've pushed ink through really well. There's trade-offs. More presses gets you a little bit better coverage, but also there's slight blurring that occurs each time you press some through. You may want to experiment with some similar fabric or some seconds of your material if you have any. Once I've scraped it through, I'm going to scrape off the extra paint. Put the lid back on the ink so it doesn't dry out. And carefully peel the stencil away. And there we go, we have the sticker done. The ink I'm using is water-based, so I'm going to go back to the sink and wash the ink out of the screen. The screens are reusable. One thing to be careful as you're doing this is to protect the sticky parts. And as you can see, I'm not doing a great job of that. I got some stuck to the side of the sink. And I completely forgot about it as I stuck it to the clipboard, and it gets stuck pretty tight. This is where you'd want to use that clear plastic material you were supposed to save earlier. Put that on the back. That way it can stick to the easy peel surface and come off easily. There we go. That's better. It doesn't have to be perfect or wrinkle-free. After I let my screen dry in the air, I peeled the backing back off, and I'm going to line it up with my shirt and do the second color. Professionals would make a separate screen for each color. It makes it easier to do higher production runs. Somewhere in the shop, we might actually have a jig that will hold multiple screens and kind of spins around in a circle to apply each color. In this case, I'm conserving material since my design was very small, and I put each of the different parts on the same screen. I'm going to squeegee it through just like I did for the name tag. And here you can see I didn't hold my shirt down very carefully, so I got tugged along, but it's okay. It's going to turn out fine. It looks a little bit light underneath, so I'm going to give it another pass. And there, the ink looks a little darker. Gotten some more coverage through. And peel it off. And we're all done. At this point, there's differing opinions of what to do. The ink that I'm using doesn't require heat setting. It can air dry, and that's just fine. You can also speed the effect by heat setting it. Heat setting can be done with a heat gun. You can just blow hot air on it until it dries. Another technique is to use some parchment paper or another silk screen, place it on top and iron it. Professionals have a big press they'll pull down. It'll kind of steam press it in a couple of seconds. My recommendation for purchasing ink is to go to Sam Flax. Be careful because there's several kinds of ink. You'll want to find an ink that works with whatever it is that you're putting ink on. The two most common types of ink are paper ink and textile ink. Dick Blick is also a good manufacturer of beginner's inks. Screens are reusable. The manufacturer says you can use them 12 to 15 times, and you can always just make another screen. Thanks a lot. Feel free to contact me on Slack if you have any questions about how to use this kit.